I'm watching the rise. And I wouldn't say I'm shocked cause I'm hardly surprised. This one's for the ride. This one's for who knew I'd make it, just needed some time. This one's for my wife. Could have left 1,000 times just about my side.
Hey, what's up, everyone? My name is Randy Kaye, and I am the host of the Caught Up podcast. Today we have Kirsten Voak-Malgradi, who was an All-American pitcher from Arizona State University. She was a three-time All-Pac-10 selection from 1999 to 2001, was named ASU Pitcher of the Year 3 times, and was a member of the 1999 Junior Olympic team and the 2001 ASA USA National Softball team, helping lead them to the U.S. Cup, where they took home the gold medal. She also spent time coaching at the college level and now lives in South Carolina, where her and her husband, John, are coaching their daughter, Gianna, who is a standout middle infielder for their travel ball team. Kerr, it's always great to see you. Thanks for taking the time to catch up.
Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to today.
Yeah. So, Happy New Year. How are things in your world?
Things are going good. We're off to a good start. 2025 is thankfully treating us well so far, just easing into it.
Yeah.
Gianna went back to school today, so my world is getting back to normal after a nice restful holiday.
Yeah. For those that don't know, your X handle is Kerr Devil. How much did you watch the football game?
Of course. How could I not?
Oh my God. How that was that not an amazing game or what?
That was absolutely, you know what? Probably one of the best Sun Devil football games that I've seen that I can remember.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was so exciting, but I feel like this year, Sun Devil football, they just went out and did what Sun Devils do. Go ahead, count us out, and let me show you what we're going to do. It was an incredible season. Couldn't be more proud to be a Sun Devil at heart, right?
For sure. I was watching that game, and obviously the first half wasn't really going the way we wanted it. And I was at my son's house, and everybody was like, I first of all, hope they may or may not see this, but I hate watching football with people. Like, I want to just sit there by myself on my couch because I can tell everybody shut up, and I just get to watch, and I can turn the TV as loud as I want and just enjoy it. But it was really fun because to see their reaction, and they're like, oh, they're just not doing very well, and it's just not at least we had a good season. I'm like, listen, we're like one touchdown and a couple of stops away and maybe a turnover. It was funny because when they had that initial turnover in the end zone for that safety, I literally was like, all we need is a safety right here, a safety or a turnover. So anyway, it was it was a lot of fun. I'm really excited for what the future holds. And it was really cool for me, brought back some memories because I don't know if you saw towards the end when the quarterback, when he took off and kind of ran towards the end zone, he was kind of weaving through and got that first down. And then they pan over to Jake Plummer, and I was like, oh my God. And that brought back so many memories. Like, I was like, and I had literally, when he was doing that, I'm like, he looks like the snake. So it was really cool. So anyway, it was a good time. Where did you watch the game?
Home. We were home. We were hunkered in. We were watching. It's kind of the same feeling. We like to be kind of in the mix. I don't like a whole bunch. I don't want to hear everybody else, and especially when they start doubting and stuff. I want to stick in there, stay with it, and I'll tell you what, after all those years of doing recruiting visits and being in Sun Devil Stadium and just that so hot, I don't know that I could go back into the stadium. I so much prefer my own couch now. Yep.
No doubt. It's closer to the fridge, and it's so much more. You can fall asleep.
Your
right
own
in the
bathroom.
Spot. Right. You can fall asleep on the spot. That's my thing. So let's talk a little bit about your journey as a player. Talk about your high school playing days, where you played, and whether that's high school itself, travel ball. Kind of, let's get into that a little bit.
Yeah. So I grew up in Northern California, Fremont, to be specific. I played at Washington High School. We had some incredible players actually come through there. Another great pitcher, Jennifer Spidiacci, was ahead of me. She played at University of Washington and I think Team Italy as well. So she was a couple years ahead of me. So got to come in behind her in high school. And, it was a really good experience. I got to play with my best friends who I didn't have the opportunity to play with in travel ball because we were always going different directions, different ways. We had some good players. We had some good times, but we had a lot of fight. So it was a great experience. I'm not sure if I still hold the perfect game record in the state, but that was up there. I think I had 9 back then. But it was different, but the same as it is now. The high school experience, it's great. It has, a lot of tradition to it, and you get to represent your school. You get to play with people that you wouldn't have the opportunity to, for whatever reason.
Right.
And that's what made it great for me.
Yeah. High school is always interesting. So you said you did not play with very many of the kids at your high school on your travel ball team.
Right. Yeah. I think, for a little bit, my best friend, who was also my catcher, in high school, she played on our travel ball team. She was my best friend from the time we were in kindergarten and still to this day. She played at Cornell University, Chrissy Trout. And I think her and one other kind of popped in and out of my travel ball team, but that was it. We were from all across the Bay Area, got together and got after it. I played with some great college standouts. One notably, Veronica Nelson, who was All-American at Cal. She and I played all through travel ball together. We were one of the original San Jose Lady Sharks. Way back when we won nationals. 16U nationals way back when.
Is that ASA?
And yeah, ASA before PGF, before all the other affiliations that have popped up now.
Yeah.
We traveled the country. We had some great times. We had some players that played at Baylor. We were a ragtag group of Northern California kids. I think we were actually the first Northern California team to go down south to Southern California and qualify for nationals, because back then you had to compete for every inch, and there were only a handful of berths. There was only one nationals. It changed location each year, so it was a dogfight. And, our parents, they didn't have the resources to, travel the country and go and fight for all these other, berths. We had one shot at it back then. Southern California was the only place that you could qualify for it down there. So we drove that 7 hours down south, and we were the first Northern California team to kind of make a stand when everything used to be SoCal.
It was all SoCal.
Yeah.
What kind of player were you? Like, if you describe yourself as in that time at 16U, high school age.
Yeah, high school age, I would say, well, I can tell you one thing. I was a very shy kid, so you wouldn't catch me dead on a podcast or even on a phone back then. Oh yeah, I was very shy, but when I got on the field, I was all compete, and I was all about who's next. Back then, who
instilled that in you? Who'd you get that from? You think?
Yeah, probably a little bit of both of my parents. My dad's a little bit more on the quiet side. My mom's a little bit more outgoing. But yeah, probably my dad. My dad and I, the field was our place, right? So back then I was kind of like, it was all about quietly just work and then get on the field and get after it. And you've got a very short amount of time to prove yourself. And we were always kind of that team. And I was very fortunate and very lucky that my Shark girls, they were it. We were thick and thin. It's something that you don't find too much nowadays. We had a really good core group, and we personality matched really well. So we were always going the same direction. I knew they had my back, and they knew that I was going to get in there and do whatever it took. So I'd say 16U back then. I loved playing shortstop. I was a shortstop and a pitcher back then. And I was pretty dang gritty, but also I'd say if you talk to anybody else from the outside looking in, I was pretty intimidating as a pitcher. I threw hard. I was all gas, no brakes. I had one speed and one speed only, and it was like go through a brick wall. And I loved it. I loved every bit of it. So you'd catch me out there. I would smile the entire game. I was laughing. I was having a good time, which drove the hitters nuts, drove the other coaches nuts. But I was just like big grin, having fun. Who's next?
Were you the type of player that your dad had to ask you to go, throw or hit or field, or was that something that you drove as a player?
I'd say probably a little bit of both. I don't know if there's any athlete that is all drive, right? There are those times that you just don't feel like getting out there, and yeah, you'd have to be the guy saying, "Hey, grab your stuff, let's go." And I'd kind of begrudgingly, okay, grab my stuff, get it going. But once I got out there, there was no ifs, ands, or buts. We're here to work, and it's go time. He didn't ever have to drag me once my feet hit the dirt. It was business, right? And my dad, he owned his own business. He was a prototype machinist. He would work like 24 hours, be up completing jobs, get home for 2 seconds, like take his little break and go, "Hey, grab your stuff. We got to go." So I had somebody who was pushing me, but also showing me like, this is worth it, right? If you have any kind of chink in your armor, and a lot of players, and I think parents don't realize this too, the parents are just as, or have to be just as invested as the players, and not just with, the pocketbooks and things like that. My dad, he was the one out there catching me. He was the one that would, kind of give me the business of, when he could see that I was really stepping into something or getting ready to take a big step forward, he was the one going, miscatching the ball so it wouldn't quite pop the glove enough. And he'd be like, "Oh, really? Is that all you got?"
Right.
He'd be the one just constantly challenging me, or, moving his bucket just a little bit further back to the point that I'm not noticing because I'm not focused on that. Or, he'd put his glove up, and if I didn't hit it just right within 2 pitches, he'd let it hit the backstop and make me come walk up and get it. Just little things, knowing who I was as an athlete and the things that drove me nuts. He would put that on me. He wasn't worried about making me angry or upset, or, what it was going to be like the car ride home. He was always challenging me.
Funny story. I mean, I know exactly the pitchers, right? You guys are a little different. Like, so yeah. Funny story is my buddy Casey Nelson, who I coached my first team with. We had Bree Maha back then. And yeah. I remember it was like maybe third, because back then it's like that's when kids would throw 2 or 3 games in a day, and we'd go out. We'd be like in the second or third game, and Casey would tell our catcher, "Hey, after the first couple pitches, just call timeout, especially that one that pops the glove. Call timeout and walk out there and say, hang on a second, I need a minute. That one came in hot, like you're throwing hard."
Yeah.
And then you would just see like a whole nother level of like,
oh yeah, that's right.
She would just go. So yeah, no, the mind games. You said your dad was a prototype machinist. I think I've told you this, but I'm a machinist by trade as well. Have done a lot of prototype stuff and production stuff, and from, all areas of machining. But knowing that about him, did he try to educate or learn the details of pitching, or how did like, was he a big influence on you? Because I know for me as a machinist, like we want to know, like from the very minute we think of making, the iPhone, like we're going to, okay, what kind of material is it? How am I going to make this thing? What are the steps? And in our mind, I call it the machinist curse. Like from the minute I take on a job, or when I used to do it, I would have to know every single step until it was done. So you really couldn't like go forward until you knew the whole thing. So my point of that was, was he a really analytical guy and try to get into the details of everything?
Oh yeah, I mean, probably one of the best tools that I've ever used or been given or shown was my dad's take on this whenever we first started, right? He had no idea what this softball business was. And I got started in this game not of my own free will. I will tell you that. I thought one day, you know, I'm 9 years old. My parents were like, what do you want to sign up for? Some kind of sport or something. And me, like most little girls, I'm like, I want to do gymnastics. I want to go swing on those bars and, you know, wear the cute little outfits and stuff. So I thought we were heading to sign up for gymnastics. And meanwhile, he jerks the car over to the left. And that day we end up signing up for softball. So he started out with me doing more of a baseball style pitching. We had no idea. We didn't have the internet really going back then to look things up like we can now.
Encyclopedia.
Yeah. So it was him kind of going around and looking at these other pitchers that are older, right? And we'd be at these tournaments and he'd go and find their dads and say, hey, who's she see? What's she doing? What's, you know, what are these pieces? And this is obviously as I'm a little bit further along when I'm into travel ball.
Yeah.
And then in between games, instead of, you know, messing around or just running around the complex, goofing off or whatever, my dad would have me go pick out the best pitcher I could find that was playing. So we'd walk to each backstop. We'd stand back there and he goes, all right, tell me what she's doing right. Tell me what she's doing wrong. What do you see that you could put into your pitching motion and let's go try it? You know, so it was the philosophy that serves me now to this day of there's no one right way to pitch. There is no one wrong way to pitch. There's a whole lot of different ways and there's a whole lot of different kids and different built bodies.
Right.
That any one of those things, you know, it may not have served me as a 12-year-old, but dang, I'll tell you what, I went back into my memory banks and went, you know, I used to see this kid and she would do this and I'm trying it when I'm in college. You know, we didn't really have a solid pitching coach when we were at ASU. So it was me and Erica Beach kind of mastering our own craft and kind of bouncing stuff off each other. And it was that where it allowed me kind of before you had film sessions and all the video recall and stuff like that, but to go and look at these kids and go, hey, she's doing this. She's got a really good curveball. Wow, that's awesome. Or I keyed in on a kid that actually played on Trisha Ford's team. So Trisha Ford and I grew up in the same area. Her younger sister, Carrie, played with me on the San Jose Lady Sharks as well. And Trisha's team, they're warming up. One of them's throwing a knuckleball. Now, I will tell you this, I could not throw a changeup or slow a ball down to save my life until later, but I could throw a knuckleball like nobody's business. And it happened to be, I think 14 at the time, and we're watching the bigger girls. And this kid's throwing a knuckleball, and I look at my dad, I'm like, what is that? And he's like, oh, that's a knuckleball. Okay. We start fiddling around with it and tinkering with it. And that kind of became that idea of every pitcher should be their own mad scientist a little bit, because there's something new and different that you can pick up from anybody doing anything. You don't need a pitching coach to tell you, hey, this is how you hold the ball, or this is how you should do this mechanic and just do this drill over and over. But see things, look at how these kids are doing it and imitate it just a little bit and see what you come up with. There's nothing wrong in having a little fun with your craft, with your skill, and seeing what other people do and tip your hat and go, wow, she does that really great. I wonder if there's something that I can see that she's doing that I could try myself.
Right. Speaking of that, watching, going around and watching people at tournaments, I hear coaches say this all the time. Players don't watch enough softball. Like,
agreed.
And there is so much opportunity to watch games and watch players and try to learn. I mean, last night I'm at practice and Coach Kara lit our kids up, as who you know as well. because we got some, a group of kids that are actually running. We're doing defense. And she's like, why aren't you watching? Like, I know you're waiting in line to run, but like you play the same position as this kid, and I always tell kids this too, like, the greatest things about mistakes is you learn from them, right? But they don't always have to be yours. They can be someone else's. So on the positive side of that, it can be, what, like you said, what someone else does well, or how they manipulate the ball, or how they create some sort of what do you call it? Distraction, or
movement,
deception is the word I was looking for. How do you create some deception? So no, that's all good stuff. I can't say enough. Like, I know that it must have been crazy, like, thinking about it. Like, you didn't have YouTube, or you didn't have the internet, I mean, it's so, man, even for myself, because I'm obviously, the same age around. And so, like, I get it. Let's talk. So you go, how did you end up at Arizona State? What drove you to go there? What was the draw? Did you know somebody? How did that come about?
So, it came about, it was actually, I got my very first recruiting letter after the 14U Nationals, from Ann, Pedersen, back then, Rowan. She was the first one to send me a letter. I'll never forget that first letter. So that made the first impact on me of, wow, somebody actually wants me. Right.
Yeah.
Because when you're that age, you're hopeful, and that's when the sport was really just kind of getting going. Lisa Fernandez and them, they were on the backside. They had just graduated from UCLA and kind of getting things going on the map. And there's a little bit of excitement about the sport, and
And
my dad was always pushing me. Oh shoot, let's see.
If you had to guess,
93, maybe.
Okay.
Maybe, yeah. Somewhere around there, 93, 94.
Okay. Cool.
So just kind of getting into it and going, wow, there's actually a possibility that this sport might open the doors to college for me, because it was always, wow, just hopefully your high school will want you. Hopefully you'll make the high school team back there. And that was one of the things, my dad was always like, you never know. So you better work your tail off, because you just might not be good enough. That was always that little back there to drive you. And it was like, okay, these kids, don't worry about them. It's the kid that you can't see that you got to be in constant competition with. Right.
Right.
So got my first letter after nationals, and that was super exciting. So I think that kind of put ASU kind of in my head as that first, that the good feel was surrounding that experience right there. I mean, I had a lot to choose from, and I was the kid, like I said, I was really quiet. I played everything close to my vest. Now being friends with a lot of these coaches that unfortunately had to recruit me, they were like, you were difficult because I was a one-word answer. You couldn't read me, that total picture.
Yeah.
Including my parents. They really wanted me to go to ASU, but they knew if they pushed me in that direction, it would be a hard 2 feet stomp and a no.
Right.
Because I was the one that was in control of my process. So I took all 5 of my recruiting visits. I absolutely loved Coach Blevins at University of Iowa. Really, really enjoyed my experience. And I'd say probably personality-wise, that probably actually fit me the best, because I am a small town type of person. I'm not a big city kind. I went to South Florida with Coach Kenny Erickson, who, again, one of my all-time favorites and fondest memories right there. He actually approached my dad in Colorado when he was coming out and kind of scared my dad, like, hey, Coach, Mr. Voak. And it was like, okay. And then we had a meeting at the hotel, and it was terrifying for me because I was so shy. And Coach Erickson, he's a big guy, and he's got that New Jersey way. And it was like, whoa. But I really absolutely loved him. And then I took a trip to the University of Florida Loved that. And I actually went on the trip with Missy Hickson, who ended up being one of my teammates at ASU. And it was kind of that wherever you end up, I'm going to end up. But funny enough, I was not a partier whatsoever. Through college, I was about as straight laced as you could be, because I was so worried about messing up and screwing up our chances for anything. So that was a little bit too much on the party side for me on my trip. And and my last one was ASU. And it was like, I remember getting to the airport, my dad and I were sitting there, and I just, right before I got on that plane, because back then you could actually go sit in the waiting area before having security and everything.
Yeah.
I'm so dating myself. But I remember just getting up and just matter-of-factly telling them, hey, I'll see you in a couple days. Oh, by the way, I'm going to verbal this weekend. And my dad was just like, what? So, I had my mind made up, and it was about the girls that I was going to play with that I knew were going to be verbaling. There was a lot of Arizona Storm, the very first group of Arizona Storm girls. It was Kara Brunn, Missy Hickson, Erica Beach. We had that core group, and we'd run into each other playing travel ball. I remember I think we were in Tennessee, and we paired up against them at like 2:00 in the morning, and we were all just tired as tired could be. And we kept, running into them throughout the next couple of years. And it was like, wow, wouldn't it be so cool to play together? And that's kind of how we ended up. We had a great freshman class coming in at ASU. We were the Fab Five back then. We had one of the top recruiting classes in the country. So it was great. But honestly, one of the biggest deciding factors for me was ASU was kind of on the lower half of the pack back then. But they played every school that was in the College World Series. They played the best of the best. And I'd say that is what I wanted out of everything. I wanted to be that team that was going to go in there and wreak a little havoc for the teams that were constantly at the top. I wanted to compete.
Yeah, you wanted to help build something and and compete. It's funny, when I went back and looked at when I looked up that year when you were at Arizona State, or those couple of years, that name Missy, I don't know why, because I wasn't really into softball back then. I was still, I think my kids were pretty young still, because my oldest daughter, I think, was born in 92. So like she was just getting into softball. But I remember that name, Missy Hickson, and Braga is do you remember that? Is it Devin?
Yeah.
And I think, isn't there like a term? Wasn't there a tournament for a long time named after? Was it her dad or somebody that was related to her? I just remember that name.
Yeah, we changed
Dave?
one of the tournaments. Mm-hmm. Yeah, got changed to his name after he passed. Yeah.
Interesting. And so how was it playing for Linda Wells?
It was good. It was different. I definitely say I had a closer relationship with Anne, throughout the recruiting process and stuff. And Linda was, a little bit more in your face and kind of hard to follow with certain things for me. But I didn't care who I was playing for. I was going to give you everything that I had. It was a job, and that was one thing that Linda, that I am very, very thankful for. She always put it in a way to, and she was really great about talking about Title IX and where we were at, back then. She was one that led the way to have Club Farrington built. When I was a freshman there, we had wooden bleachers. We had a double wide that was the coach's office that they were just kind of given back there. The field today is still the same, except for that chain link fence that you see on the backside of the home run fence. Well, that used to be our home run fence.
Oh, wow.
So the further fence was ours.
You probably
way
liked
back
that
then.
as a pitcher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still gave up plenty, but
So
that
it happens when
rise
you throw
ball
hard.
will get you. Yeah.
It happens when you throw hard.
That's right. That's right.
Did you was your who did you play for primarily growing up in travel ball? Was it a male or a female or a combination?
It was a combination. It was a combination. Yeah, I had both. I liked both. I'd say as a player, I was really fortunate because I had the experience, and a lot of it came from like playing with Team USA to get a wide variety of coaching, to know, these are things that I like. These are things that I don't necessarily enjoy or like, but I respect it. And then I had some coaches after I was done playing at ASU that paved the way to be like, I know what kind of coach I don't necessarily want to be, but I absolutely, now working with you, I know exactly what I want to be and who I want to be to players after me. Right. So that was a big deal for me. I wouldn't change my 4 years at ASU for the world. It was hard. It was challenging. It was absolutely incredible. Some of the best memories of my life, some of the highest highs and lowest lows, from, the injuries to the accolades and everything in between. I am so thankful for it. I wouldn't go back and change it.
Yeah. And you said you came in when Arizona State was on the lower end of the pack, and then, which was, probably opposite of what was happening in Tucson. Tell me about that, about coming into Arizona State with a great freshman class and all those names that you mentioned. Tell me about what was down in Tucson and what you guys are facing down there.
Oh yeah, Tucson was at its prime. U of A, they had Lemke down there still going. I think she was a junior or a senior when we came in as freshmen. They had just signed Jenny Finch was a freshman that year. We're all the same year. They had Tony Mascarenas, just an incredible hitter. So this day, she and I would go rounds. I loved getting up 2 strikes on a hitter, and she loved hitting two strike counts. Lindsey Collins down there, man, we had some of the greatest battles. But it was a great time to be part of that rivalry. That's for sure.
Do you remember like scores or specific games, or you just remember the whole, like, competing and trying to, knock them off? Like, what's your biggest memories?
Honestly, I would say I've got a couple. One was that, when they went on that big tear, and it was Jenny Finch later in our playing career, where she had that long streak of undefeated. We were the first loss, or their last loss, to start the streak. And then we were the team that gave them the loss to break the streak. And then I would say probably the highlight and one of the best memories was when we beat U of A for the first time at home at Sun, right there. Club Farrington was rocking. And the late, great Coach Kachikawa was in attendance. He would come out to our practices. He would always call Linda's phone, leave her, voice messages of "Go team." Man, he meant so much to us. So he was there, and we gave him the winning ball at the end. So that was huge.
It's crazy too, because if you talk about Becky Lemke or Jenny Finch or Tony Mascarenas, like, those names are still involved. And, and obviously, Erica Beach is out there still involved in the game. You're involved in the game. Kara, we've talked about it. She coaches with me in my Oregon on my staff at 18U. And so it's so crazy to me, like, to be able to look in and kind of tap into that, that time, and just kind of hear, like, you guys were like, it was the real deal. And Kara talks about it a lot. Not about herself, but just how much you guys, like, it was important, like, competing and having your teammates back, making sure you show up ready to compete. Yeah, that must have been a great time. What was it like? I mean, did everybody already realize how big of a name or how influential or important Coach Candrea was at that time?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I will say he's one of the main guys that taught me, the type of coach that I want to be afterwards, and I'm proud to say he is also a Sun Devil alumni.
Right.
For those that don't know it, I'll just throw that out there. Coach Candrea, one of the greatest minds in the game, one of the ultimate hitting guys. I mean, he would break stuff down and have every single one of our holes mapped out as hitters back then. But he was quiet in his approach. He wasn't a big, huge personality. Look at me. He let his girls shine, kind of the grind it out. And we always knew that his teams were going to be prepared and ready when we got down there. I was fortunate enough to work with him with Team USA. And then after I graduated at ASU, I would go down there 3 times a week and hit with him. He wanted nothing to do with pitchers. He thinks that we're all crazy and you can use the bullpen and just go do whatever you're going to do. But he would hit with me until I couldn't hit anymore. I mean, I remember driving down there and John would go with me every once in a while, my husband. And I remember we hit and I felt like nothing was clicking. Nothing was working. And back then I didn't like to wear batting gloves because I like the feel of the bat. It's that pitcher thing. I don't like things on my hands.
Right.
And I swear we hit for almost 3 hours, and at that point, my hands, they are raw. Those blisters are open. And I'm like, I'm going to be here until I get it right. Cause things aren't clicking. And I just felt like I was getting to the point mentally where I felt like I've wasted the day. I'm not getting better. Oh my gosh. All the negative drift thoughts of, shoot, I'm never going to get this. I'm not going to make the next US team. I'm not going to this. I'm all the knots, all the negativity. Right.
Yeah.
And it just felt, and then I started going, well, shoot, now I'm wasting his time. Here I have the opportunity to work with Mike Candrea and I'm down here and it's been almost 3 hours. And he goes, let me see your hands, Kerr. And I'm going, no, I'm good. Put the ball on the tee. Let's go. Let's go some more. I'm not getting this. I have to get this before I go. And I barely kind of pull my fingers off the bat. My hands are just bloody. And he goes, what lesson did you learn? And I'm like, God, so many, there was so much dumped in that day. And he goes, he smacked my hand. And he goes, you learned to go get yourself a pair of batting gloves. And I was like, yes, coach. Yes, coach. But before I left that day, he put into perspective how many things that I got better at, all the little things that I had forgotten to focus on, or I hadn't been taught to focus on at that point, right? It's all the little things that make up the big things. And I walked out of there going from, feeling like you're in the trash mentally to going, heck yeah, I got better. I can do this. And I walked out feeling like I was on cloud 9. And that was honestly probably the biggest moment where I figured out that's the type of coach that I want to be. I want to be that coach that has their players leave, even though nothing went right, feeling accomplished. Because it's not about doing it right. It's about getting closer to doing it more efficiently. You can get away with so many bad habits and all these things. And he was like, you were a dangerous hitter because I never knew what you were going to do next, because I wasn't one of those, cookie cutter hitters. I was very just see it, feel it, do it. And he was like, that's what made you dangerous. I could take a walk and on really close pitches. I mean, my dad, he would pay me to strike out because I just didn't ever hardly strike out. And I think it was a little bit of that chess game of, haha, pitcher, I'm going to beat you. That pitch wasn't good enough. Or I could turn around and hit it over the fence. And so it was, I was dangerous because there wasn't any one particular hole I would change from one at bat to another, which wasn't always great, but it served a little purpose that you don't have to be that perfectly polished athlete that just does it the same way each time, because it did create holes. So, but yeah, he put a lot of time and effort. We worked out one Christmas Eve, and his wife had to come and get him and go, get out of here, man. We got to go. But
and this was after college?
Yeah. Yeah. This was after college. Had to do some cleanup from some injuries. And I'd say maybe 6 months later, I was down there. I went to watch a U of A game, and he was like, "What the heck are you doing up there?" And I was like, "Just enjoying the sport from a different view." And he was like, "Get down here. Let's get back to work." Yes, coach. Yes, coach. So, he made a huge impact on me. Him, Patrick Murphy at Alabama, another great motivator, absolutely incredible influence on me. John Rittman. These are the guys that really, they put the work in, but they invest in their kids, and their kids know it. And they make sure that their kids are always leaving the field feeling like they accomplished something. So that's kind of, me going back and saying, like, these were the motivators, because to be honest with you, and, Ann will tell you this, when we started at Grand Canyon, we started the program there.
Yeah.
We sat down and she was like, "Hey, I want you to come and help me start this program." And I was like, ugh, I just finished playing. I wasn't sure. I was still taking a couple classes that I had left to graduate. And I was like, I don't see myself coaching. Yeah. I don't think I want to coach. I had my plan set. I was going to go work for social services. I wanted to help kids, help families. I was planning on heading a different route. And she's like, "No, I think you should try this. Like, just try it. What else do you have lined up for work afterwards?" And I'm like, "Nothing." So we jumped into it, and lo and behold, 20 plus years later, we're still kicking.
And look what that place has become now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's turned into a really, really viable option for anybody around. I mean, there's a lot of good kids coming to play at Grand Canyon. Let's go back to ASU. So you play. We'll talk about the Junior Olympic stuff in a minute, but I want to stay on ASU, and I want to talk about your time as a coach there, because that right there is a good staff. And I told you the other day, I keep getting you mixed up in that time of playing in that 08, time frame, but I forgot you were coaching. So tell me a little bit about what that was like, coaching with. I mean, look at all the names you just listed. Rittman. Coach
Murph.
Candrea, and now you look and you throw in, Murphy, you mentioned Patrick Murphy, and now you throw in a name like Clint Myers. Like, Tell me about that and coaching with that staff and what that was like.
Well, it was great because, again, ASU had kind of gone down, right? It was a lower point. And Linda was just retiring. So coming in, definitely a different philosophy. Clint, he's a baseball guy. He was a different mentality than most, and he was so proud of that, of being, I'm different. I'm nothing that you've ever experienced before, and darn proud of it. So it was definitely different, but it was great. It was a shot to the arm for that program. We built that team. We built that era of Sun Devil softball based on grit, hard work, and a sense where our girls, like I talked about how I grew up having the opportunity to play with a core of girls that we were intertwined, and still to this day so deeply. And I feel like our girls that played in those years, from that 2006 till 13-ish, those girls they're thick and thin thieves together. Like now to this day, I see them on social media, and their ride or dies are each other, and that's something U of A had back then when I was playing. And that's something that is, it's not tangible, but it is so very important. And it was us against the world. It was, we will guarantee you this as a coaching staff. We're going to work just as hard, if not harder, than you, the players. We came in with that, and we told them, like, you got to be open-minded. You got to be willing to go through the hard and then take 2 more steps through. Right. There was no quit. There was no quit in those girls. And we didn't have a transfer portal back then. We had everything that we came in and worked with. They were the girls from the previous year. We said, okay, this is your position. Well, not anymore. You're going to go and change to this. I remember we flipped Rihanna Baca. She was a righty hitter, a little bit of shortstop, a little bit of pitch once upon a time. And then we said, hey, you're going to be a slapper. I mean, it's almost unheard of for kids to flip around mid-college career. Yeah. Yeah. And she was so dang good. She was so good. We took a couple kids that would come in as transfers. And we're like, okay, you got to fight for every ounce. We had kids that were so invested, not just in the program, but in their teammates, that we were like, listen, you are an incredible player. We want you to have the opportunity to play and make an impact and to have all of this stuff. But we don't know that you're going to see much playing time here with us. But you're more than welcome, and we try to, encourage them. And they're like, we're in it. We are in it thick and thin. Like, doesn't matter. I'm here for it all. And that was the huge thing. It was the environment that we created,
Yeah. So you came with Coach Myers right when he stepped in? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so that was Scott and was Chuck there too at that time?
No, none of them. It was Wags.
Yeah.
Way back then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was Clint. It was me, Jim Badia, who's now at South Florida.
Yep.
And it was Robert Wagner. And then Casey Myers would pop in there as our volunteer.
No, that was good times. Yeah. What when you talk about him being different or him saying he's different in baseball, in your mind, what does that mean? Like what is the baseball mentality versus the softball mentality?
Honestly, I think it was his demanding that we push the envelope. I mean, we became experts on finding loopholes and how we could get more out of every minute, being efficient down to the second. I mean, Lord, I would be throwing BP and he was counting how many good pitches I threw per minute and saying they need at least one more swing in every minute. Like, they got to get better. So it was every little detail down to that. I mean, we recruited kids and said, hey, I need you to become a BP pitcher. We had kids that I was teaching, Jess Donovan. She was our BP pitcher. Like, okay, honey, we're going to get into the bullpen afterwards. And this is what I need you to do. Because people don't understand. It's not just pitching. You can be a great pitcher, but the ability to throw good batting practice, BP, it's a skill of its own. Being able to throw through those nets and things safely and consistently, more importantly, for the hitters, was a big deal. So we would do that. I mean, we were absolutely down to the second, down to the switch. We were of the mentality, like, we got around some of the hours of, okay, well, this is the expectation that you girls are out on the field by this time so that you could be out there and do all their warm-ups. They did their warm-ups on their own, so it didn't cut into our allotted hours specifically. Our individuals, we would break down, and this is the individual work. But then there was also the expectation, if you want to play, if you want to crack this lineup, you're going to have to put in a whole lot of other work. And we had some kids that came in with that mentality already. Katie Cochran, she was a maniac. She was absolutely incredible. She was there early. she would get out the tea. She would go to work just by herself. And that's something that I think a lot of kids, they don't understand when they get ready to go to the next level, that you have to be able to work on your own because you're so limited in the hours. And even though it's a big jump from what they're typically doing now with, their travel ball practices or their high school practices and things like that, there's so much more that you have to put in just to keep up. But it was about keeping your spot. And if you wanted to crack the lineup, you were in constant competition with the kid that's practicing next to you, but also the kid that's behind you, because they could be a recruited shortstop, but don't think for a second that we won't chuck them into the outfield and go, you're playing the outfield now because your stick is hotter, right? So it was that mentality of like, you can't let down, you can't coast. And that's what that team did. They just, we drove hard and we played harder, and it was all about that next little step. Where can we get the upper hand? Where can we get one more rep, one more better rep? Where can we find one more instant where we can, make something click for one of our players or them as a whole to keep them all going the same direction. Meanwhile, dealing with, academics and, personal stuff and all the things that go along with it. But it was, I think, our ability to kind of create a bubble around our group and have them all going one way.
Yeah. When you talk about bringing in players to fill a role to help the team get better, like a pitcher. It seemed that's when I really remember around that time, Coach Myers and them start building these bigger rosters, and then kids were specialty kids, whether they were helping with practice or they were running or whatever it may be. And to me, it was funny because I was just talking about this with somebody else. Because we're talking about, putting a couple teams together for the summer, and we're trying to figure out like how many to carry and this and that. And one of the things that I've always remembered about Coach Myers is once they figured out who their 9 or 10 were, like it was pretty hard to break through that. But I'm not sure it was like, hey, I've made my decision and this is what I'm sticking with. It as much as it was, I've made my decision and this is what I'm sticking with, but this kid has also been like got these other 2 or 3 kids next to him pushing them. So that kid's working and she just hasn't given up her spot. So what do you think that's the case, or do you think?
No, not at all. Not at all. Actually, to be honest, every game it was Clint had about 8 or 10 different lineups that he had narrow down from about 50.
Yeah.
And then he'd be like, Wags, Kerr, what's your lineups for today? Give me 3. And then we'd throw them out and then we would discuss them and be like, okay, this or this or this. Who's this? Who matches up better? Who's going to create more opportunities for the kid in front of them, for the kid behind them? Who's going to be our defensive anchor? If there were any little shakes or any little things coming out, but those were things that were always showing up at practice, and practice is really what put it together. It was who was, going hard all the way past the minute that practice is over to who's putting the time in, who's in the video room sitting there with me going through stuff, who's coming in extra, doing all these things to prep and understand who matches up better with this pitcher versus the other pitcher that we're going to face. So there was a lot of that. It wasn't necessarily, these are the top 9, that's who we're locked into, because it could change at a moment's notice. And we always told them, like, you may be in the lineup today, but the minute somebody else passes you or the minute that you trip and they have the opportunity, if they get the opportunity and they go in there, then you have to wait for them to falter in order to get back in. So it was always like, hey, you guys are the ones that are riding the lineup. You decide based on how well you go. So the ones when you got it, when you were those top 9, you had to stay up there and continue to compete. And if you let off the gas at all, that next person, they could get in there and never let it go.
Yeah. No, I just remember those were great times, and it just seemed like it went by in a blur. And do
Yeah.
you still talk to? You ever talk to Coach or see
Not
him
too much,
around?
not too
No.
much. I know he's doing some stuff. I think he's doing baseball with his grandkids and stuff. So yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, every once in a while I'll see Wags out at the ball field on the recruiting trail.
Man, I don't see that guy that much anymore. Yeah, he was a good dude. I remember him as
hmm
well. Tell me about your experience on Team USA. What was that like?
A dream, an absolute dream. To play with the players that you always looked up to and was like, dang. And I used to get so excited about the fact that I got to play against, some of the greats. And that was amazing. And then, going down for, some of the team camps or the tryouts. And I remember I was getting paired up with Jenny Topping, and one, she was my bunk mate. She was my catcher that week. And it was like, oh, hey. And we were so used to just going against each other, same with Lindsay Collins at U of A. She and I got paired up, and I remember calling home to John and being like, you'll never guess who I got paired up with. How could they put us, ASU and U of A, together? And she was saying the same thing. And she was like, man, I couldn't stand you. And I was like, yeah, but then we became like, it was like, you're not so bad. I really like you, so it was a great experience to really feel the connection because you're competitors, and playing with those kids and seeing them from a different side. It was just kind of like, wow, we're all pretty much the same. Yeah, we're all the same crazy boat, that there's nothing that will get in our way of trying to achieve greatness, no matter who we're playing with. Team USA was absolutely incredible, from playing international to playing with and against the world's greatest instead of the country's greatest, right?
Yeah. Was there any one particular travel or event that sticks out that you remember?
Oh yeah, we had. Taiwan with the junior national team. That was incredible. That was my first real trip outside of the country. At that point, it was like, wow, this is a big deal.
Yeah.
We stayed with all the teams and stuff, and being in a different country, different customs, different foods, different smells, all that stuff. No parents to be seen or heard of. It was wild, but also incredible. Playing on these field surfaces that were different. That was my first time playing in one of the games. They had us at the stadium, which was a baseball stadium, and kind of cut out, to make a softball stadium and stuff. And that was awesome. Just the different, just everything was so different, so new, a little bit different when you have the umpires with different, languages, and they're coming up and they're saying, hey, girls know jewels. And we're like, what are the jewels? Oh, you mean our earrings? Okay. Just little things like that, or being out, at the parks and stuff, trying to, acclimate to different temperatures. Cause oh my gosh, I don't think I've ever experienced hot and humid like when we were there. So begging the parents that were coming over later to bring peanut butter and jelly, cause the food offerings were so different at that point. It was great. It was great.
Do you follow the USA stuff now? And if so, like, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I do a little bit, not as close as I used to. As we've got the new generation kind of, building up, right? So I'm not as familiar with the girls. Once she retired and stuff, she was one of my roommates once upon a time. So I think there was a big lull when we started, having like PGF come in and Alliance, that kind of shifted away from ASA when everything started to kind of bloom a little different. I feel kind of like, the pipeline kind of was a little bit different in the developmental stages. And it took a little while for USA softball to kind of, shift with the changing of the times. And I feel like now in the last couple of years, that pipeline to build the national team is generating a lot more excitement now currently.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I've done a little bit of looking into some of the stuff going on, and I mean there was a bunch of teams out in Florida a couple weeks ago, or a bunch of kids, I should say. And one of the kids I had Brian Colsey on a few weeks
Yes,
back.
the mayor. The
Yeah.
mayor.
Yeah, and off camera I asked him, I said, so I know I didn't really want to ask you names, but like was there any one kid that stood out? And he told me about a kid that stood out, and sure enough, all over Twitter I've seen this kid everywhere now. And so all good stuff. I feel like it's tracking in the right direction. I'm anxious to see how it interferes with, the summer and some of the teams. But I think it's a good thing. I mean, I think, anything we can do to rep the country, I think is good. So it should
I think
be
it'll
good.
just be that new little shift
Yeah.
of things to come, and that's never a bad thing, as long as we continue to grow the sport and give these girls an opportunity to chase their dreams. We're at a point where, there's so much out there and so much available. It's both good, and bad. There's pluses and minuses to everything that we're seeing in the college realm right now. That's, has yet to be seen as we kind of step into the first wave of it. But everything continues to change and morph. If it stays the same, it dies. It's one of those things. I remember hearing it as an athlete, but then also as a coach, and remembering that at the college level, you are in the business of entertainment. You're in there to entertain the fans, and the more support you have, the better the opportunities become for the future. So,
Right.
I'm always telling my girls, you're not just doing this. You're not just putting the hard work in for you today. You're putting it in for the future, for those girls that come behind you. I'm so big on mentorship. We like to practice our girls with older girls. And when we were running the Arizona Suncats, we always had our college girls come back, but also had our 18s, our 16s, our 14s always practicing together. So there was that constant mentorship. And that's such a big deal for a lot of kids and coaches to always remember, you're doing this for the moment, for the current kids, their moment, but it's what's the impact that they're going to make later. I think one of the things that I'm most proud of is having so many of the kids that have played for me over the years that are now college coaches themselves, or now coaching travel ball, or being pitching coaches, as they go on to chase their dreams.
Yeah.
There's so many that are making impacts.
Yeah, the game just keeps expanding, and your network or your player pool. I think that's the best part. Let's talk about coaching. You coach a travel ball team, like I mentioned in the open with your daughter plays on it. But I want to talk about, because you just said having and building and having mentorship. The only way you do that is if you have a whole group of families and players buying into one thing. And it seems that that's really hard nowadays. Because you mentioned that, when you went to college, you went in with a group that knew each other and they wanted to play for each other. But it that formed over, I'm assuming, years.
Mm-hmm.
But what are your thoughts on travel ball right now? How do you handle your team? How do you handle coaching pitchers? Those things are really interesting to me, because I'll just tell you, I feel like I've got a lot of really good pitching in this organization, or in my organization. And I'm trying to figure out, how do we make them better? How do we, there's got to be some secret, or something that you can help me figure out. And I know I rambled a little bit, but give me your perspective on coaching travel ball and coaching pitchers.
I think the biggest thing for us is we set the expectation. We let everybody know, this is Hands down, I'm not doing the recruiting spiel with you. This is what you're going to get. We are not lying. We are not, making it sound bigger or better than it actually is. I feel like most people are like, are you trying to talk me out of doing this? And it's more like, no, we're letting you know what the actual expectation is. Your kids are not always going to be happy, and that's okay. That's okay. There are days that they're going to have to experience the hard if they want to get where they want to go. Now, I personally, and I feel like, my husband, John, and I, we're both the same philosophy, especially with this piece, is I don't want the top-notch kids necessarily. I want the blue-collar kids that aren't afraid to go in and get dirty and to feel sore, to have their brains struggle with different concepts as they push themselves forward. It's hard. It is not easy. And like I said, early, it's about the buy-in of the parents. Like, parents, this is not something that your kids can do on their own if they want to get to that next level. We're doing this with the idea and the intention of getting these kids onto their next 4 years once they leave us, to the four-year level, right? Whether that's D1, D2, D3, NAIA, it's about the kid and their fit. So we're very open and honest with that. We're very direct with what the challenges are going to be, and that, we're not going to blink. We're not going to get upset over it. It's not anything that you guys need to get upset over when, your kid has that one hard day, or she's not successful at the plate, during this tournament, or she's not batting 900, because it's just not realistic. We talk to him a lot about failure and wanting them to fail, which is so different, because so many coaches are like, no, it's success. It's we won this tournament, or they'll, go to specific tournaments where they know they can just smash all these other teams, and they lose that little bit of compete. We tell everybody, hey, we're different, especially out here in South Carolina. We're different. We're not playing local. We're not even playing our own age group. We're going to age up. When they were playing 14s last year, we're going to age up. We're going to play 16s. We are first year 14s with the group that we have now, first year 16s, but could still play 14s throughout the fall. Well, guess what? We're going to go play PGF, and we're playing 18s. We're playing Show Me the Money in Florida. We're going to go play against teams that have 8 SEC seniors committed. And you guys are going to go out there and you're going to see and feel and taste what that looks like, where you say you want to get to. So you have the understanding, and it's not about what the score is. I mean, they mightily took it to us, but then we had teams that we were competing with, and it was like, our girls are right there, and you can see it and you can taste it, and you're like, wow, we're so close. And it's holding on to those points and going, this is where we're going. So when it gets really hard at the end of the fall, we need you to remember this right here, how you feel as parents, that pride, that, wow, I see it. And remember that when we go and play these kids that are all seniors and we're a bunch of 8th grade and freshmen, remember this. This is where we're at. This is where we're going. So making sure that we're constantly, communicating with the parents, with the kids, but also being, we're not going to cut any kid that wants to come and join and put in the hard work. You can come and you can work your tail off. It does not mean that you're going to play. It doesn't mean anything other than we guarantee you the right to compete for your opportunities, and then it becomes, all right, they figure out, and we push the girls and we do some things. We're very intentional about building that community, within the team, that camaraderie, that tightness. But it's about, go ahead, fail, because you're not working for yourself. You're working for the kid that's to the left and the right of you. If you're worried about them and you know that they're worried about you, they're going to take care of you. You guys can get so much done. I think that's a huge thing. We worked with a guy named Jamie Slife with the program many years ago, and we'd bring him out and he would put the girls through some absolutely incredible times together, which allows these kids to really grow in confidence and find themselves, you know. And when our girls on the field know that they don't have to be afraid, they're not letting down their teammate as long as they're giving their best effort, they're willing to do so much more. So that's pretty exciting, but also pushing them and going, listen, I know you're going to fail and it's okay. And it's not something to be afraid of. It's not something to shy away from. Fail so that you know what you need to do to be better. Fail so that you know where you stand in the moment. Instead of, you know, so many parents and players, they try to look at all these other different places and go, where do I stand? And they spend so much time breaking down these other players and saying, well, my baby's better than this. We don't care about them. We care about that invisible player in front of you. And are you 1% better today than you were yesterday? And knowing that your 100% effort isn't always going to be 100%. Some days it's going to be 70%. But on those days where you feel like you've only got 70% in your tank, are you willing to give me all 70 of it? Or are you the kid that's like, I just don't feel like it today. I'd much rather stay in where it's warm and cozy and, you know, I'll do it tomorrow. So, you know, putting the challenge out there and rebuilding the thought process of compete rather than win. You know, winning's great, but I can tell you as college coach, we're not counting your wins. I don't care. I'm not looking at your player stats and, you know, your athletes go live or, you know, any of the other platforms. I want to see who are you competing against, because that tells me your baseline. I don't care about high school stats. Have fun, enjoy your time, play the game, find your love for the game. Travel ball time, go compete. We're all about go find the biggest, the baddest players that are just like, wow, those kids, you know, they got it and they're going to that next level, and go, okay, you want to do that? You want to go to this schools? You have these on your list? Then this is what that takes. And we're pretty good about mapping that out and just being upfront. Hey, this weekend, this is going to be tough. Parents understand this is going to be tough and it's okay.
Yeah. What about as a former pitcher? How do you build your pitchers up? How do you build pitchers? And then two questions. How do you build them up to get them to where you need them? And then once they're there, how do you keep them there?
That's the best part. Great question. So for me, I'm big on building the relationship. Each pitcher is different. Each pitcher is different in how they feel things and how they interpret things, you know. So I'm not huge when I do lessons. I really like the individual side of things when I'm working with them. I like to make sure that I have time, like even if my pitchers during practice, we don't spend a lot of time doing a lot of live pitching, but I'm taking that time to really kind of, hey, how you doing? How you feeling? You know, having that relationship with your pitcher as a pitch caller, as a pitching coach. I think that's one of the most important pieces, is to be able to identify when your kids are struggling. You know, my kids used to laugh at me and they'd be like, how do you know what I'm thinking? And I'm like, it's scrolling across your forehead. It's because you take the time to get to know them really and know what triggers them and what are those pieces where, you know, they feel comfortable. And then in practice situations, really pushing them outside. And again, it's that I'm not afraid to have you be uncomfortable. I'm not afraid for you to be uncomfortable. If you join our team, we're not for everybody. But if you join this, we're going to push you into that uncomfortable level and we're going to put our thumb on you a little bit. And I'm going to put you into some impossible situations and scenarios where you have to act and react to it. I like to do some drills with my kids every once in a while, like when we're prepping and we're really getting into the mental side. And a lot of times for coaches, you know, the live pitching with the hitting, it's a time suck. It just takes so much time. So in order to, you know, make it more viable to the travel ball world, right? Because you don't have a ton of equipment. Some of us are blessed with a ton of screens, but we'll split the field up and I'll put 2-2 counts. I'll have 2 pitchers thrown live side by side, 2 hitters, catchers, and then we've got another fielder, usually some other hitting stations going on. And I will take the pitchers and I'll say, okay, you get 2 pitches to throw against these hitters. What's your favorite pitch? What's your most confident pitch? And what's your least confident pitch? And it's usually, the curveball, the screwball, the drop ball, whatever. And I'll say, okay, well, you're going to get a changeup and you're going to get the pitch that you are least confident in. And then I'll have them throw into the hitters and I'll give them it's a 2-2 count. So now the hitters are in attack mode. The pitchers have to make a good pitch. Otherwise they're going to get barreled up. And it's the intent. And I'll say, if the kids, work in the drop ball, your success is getting a ground ball in the infield.
Yeah.
Not a strikeout. We stop worrying about the strikeouts, right?
Yeah. Easy fly ball. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a fly ball. I want them to hit it. I want the hitter to hit it. And they're like, what? No. And I'm always telling the pitchers, what is your job as a pitcher? To strike them out. Wrong. That's wrong. To make them look bad. No, wrong. Your job as a pitcher is to make them swing. So if you're trying to get them to swing, then you're going to be successful because now you get the ground ball double play when you need it. And that's what makes good pitchers great. That's what's so important when you get to the next level. You could throw at 72. Hell, I threw at 72. You could have a killer rise ball. I did too. I gave up a lot of home runs. I was a strikeout pitcher, but man, I had to work hard for those strikeouts. Yeah, sure. It's easy for pitch callers because they're like, here, screwball, rise ball, screwball, rise ball, rise ball, rise ball. You don't have to think about it. But me as a pitcher at that time, I had to decide how high, where at, what point do I get it, a little bit more, a little bit that. Everybody knows exactly what I throw. It's not a surprise. So making those pitchers have to execute their pitches with hitters in there like that, it creates that stress. It allows you to kind of put them right into that, that uncomfortable zone that they don't like to be in games. And then you can stand, like I always stand behind them and I'm talking to them. And if we're in a little bit more relaxed state, I'm saying, okay, so you threw it here. Let's try for the next one a little bit further out. And I'm always talking about you're looking as a pitcher at the barrel path. So if I'm throwing a curveball and she's hitting it here and fouling it off, well, my next pitch, I want to start it right on her end cap. So now that ball's coming in and now it's moving away from that end cap. That's where I get that miss hit or the swing and miss, right?
Yeah.
And then I can take that same drill and I can up it a little bit more. I'll make the pitchers call out what pitch they're throwing because we know pitchers do not like having their pitches called.
Right.
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 But they don't understand until they're in that situation because it's terrifying. Oh my gosh, she knows what I'm throwing. And you're the one that's telling them that you're throwing it. So now the onus is on you to actually make that pitch. You've got to execute that to the highest level. You got to throw your best pitch because they know what's coming. And they start to see how successful they are. And all of a sudden you see their confidence just go through the roof. That's one of those things. And then they're not worried about, go ahead, call my pitch. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'll tell you,
Yeah.
I'll tell you, Greg Maddox, I'll tell you what's coming. I dare you to hit it.
Yeah.
And that's a little bit more of that philosophy. And it also teaches the offensive side of, this is what you're attacking. This is what you're not. So they're really getting into that pitch recognition and making the most of the one pitch that's close, because as we get higher in level, the pitchers get better and they are really good at being deceptive, like you said, and knowing what to attack, when to attack it is huge.
What about a pitcher that is talented, but maybe struggling? Because I do all those things that you talk about. I talk to my pitchers. I try to have, I'm very I want them to own their craft and their game. I tell them all the time, I'm calling something because I think based on many things that this is the pitch that we need to throw. But once you let it go, it's yours. So I want you to own it. And if you don't like it, shake it off. But so I've always kind of given them that, but I'm not really the put my arm around you, hey, get inside your feelings type of coach. I'm going to give you your space. I'm going to be very direct on what I think. And sometimes I feel like that hurts me. When you have that kid that is struggling, like what are some things me as a coach, any other coach can try to do from your perspective, a former pitcher? How can we help? That's my question.
Yeah. I think the direct approach is the best. And just to be clear, I am definitely not super lovey-dovey. I mean, yes, on the outside,
Yep.
sure, but it's direct and it's pushing them. You have to have the trust first and foremost. You have to have that trust. You have to be able to talk openly with the kids. Once you feel that they're willing to open up and talk with you, then those channels are open, and that's when you can really have the hard conversations and go, this is the plan. I feel like most kids, or just players in general, just people, right? If you lay out a plan and this is the roadmap and you can show them that this is where these choices, this plan will take you this way, this plan will take you that way, they feel more comfortable in that. If there's no plan and they can't see it and they can't feel it and they're in that world of panic that all of us experience, I think it's important that the kids know, like, hey, every player in the history has at one time thought, oh, if I were just a normie, this would be so much easier. Or, oh God, I don't think I can do this. I think I want to quit. Every single one of us has that. And we call those the filters, right? You get through it, and it's usually around that sophomore, junior year that you're really hitting that filter hard with all the extra stuff. And the what if game really starts to play out. You see so many kids that are so close to making it to the next four-year level, but it just becomes so mighty, and they may stumble and they may kind of lose their feel and deal with all the self-doubt and everything. And some kids, you kind of got to jerk them right out of it and just be like, hey, dude, this is what I need you to do right now. I'm leaving you in there. You're just going to have to deal with it. And let's go. I've had kids, we got to Southern Miss, and one of them, she was convinced that she couldn't pitch past the fifth inning, that the world would definitely, explode and burn down if she went out there. She was great up until the fifth inning. And we had a 10-run lead. I'm out there and I'm like, dude, you're out here. I'm not taking you out. You're just going to get through it. And then you're going to see that the world on the other side is okay. And I'll tell you what, it was like 10-9, and it was a little hairy, and it was all these things. And she's crying through it and just take me out. There's so many pressures that are going on in the thought process of disappointing your parents, disappointing your coaches, disappointing your friends, the loss of your dream. If I can't do it right now, I'll never be able to do it. So many things that are so heavy. But sometimes they just need to go, listen, I need you to do this, to this, to this. If you don't do that, this is what's going to happen. Yes, it's going to be ugly. It's going to be uncomfortable. And you know what? At the end of the day, it's okay still. The world won't break. But if you do this, if you just take a breath, if you can get yourself to do this one, make this one pitch. Sometimes it's just that one pitch, one time. One pitch, one time, next pitch. So what? Now what? And just going along those lines, the more you can kind of lay out the road, that they can see where they're at. And you go, this is what I see as a coach. When they can start seeing that for themselves, then they start to go, okay, it's not so big. But it's a lot of it. I mean, my dad, people were thinking he was so mean to me. Oh my gosh, he's too hard on her. It's this and that. You can't be afraid to be hard. I mean, you can't. And some kids, they need it, and they don't know what they need, but they do need it. But you have to be able to break them down and build them up.
Yeah, I think some people think of being hard as like yelling at them or, making them work more than, like we just lost a game or you pitched bad. Now you're going to go home and throw, a bullpen. To me, I think what being hard, just being real with them, being totally upfront, and it's okay. Like you said, it's okay. Okay. Hey, look, you're not getting your job done, or you haven't been very good this weekend. but that's okay. But that's the reality. And to me, finding people or having parents that are willing to like point that out and not make excuses for their kids is the hardest thing. And I tell my kids all the time, like, I had a situation last weekend, I think, or last week. We played some college kids, and I had a kid that had a pretty rough day, right? And I could tell she was upset, and I didn't say anything to her because I mean she was in her in her moment, right? She was dealing with it, and she's a mature kid. And so last night at practice, I come up and I go, "Hey, listen, just how are you feeling? How was that? I know, like you were having a tough time. I didn't feel the need to go over there and try to say, hey, it's okay. You don't need that from me. But I want to let you know, like I coach my kids like I raised my kids. I'm very direct. I'm not gonna, I honestly, I feel like even my own kids, when they come over or when they leave, I give my daughter a hug, or whoever, but it's not it's not something I do all the time, or I do all the time, but it's really not my style, but we still do it. But like, even for my own kids, like I'm not that guy, but I want them to know, like, I do care. I do believe in you. I want you to be great. And everything that I do when I'm coaching you is just to push you closer that way. And so I just wish parents could see that, parents would understand that, and just let it happen. Because at the end of the day, like, being tough on your kid doesn't mean that, just because you don't yell and scream at them doesn't mean that you're tough on them. Like, anyway, that got me into a little thinking.
Yeah. Finding what's not working.
Right.
Okay. Identify it, attack it, adjust it.
Right.
Those are those things. But to your point there, I'm always telling these kids and stuff, we want you to outgrow us as coaches. I want you to outgrow your skill set that's today, later on. Yeah. We don't have our kids start school and we're all, us as parents, oh my gosh, my baby's going to kindergarten, woohoo. I don't want her to be in kindergarten forever.
Yeah.
Right. I want her to advance. I want her to struggle in high school and go, holy crap, what did I get myself into? It
makes him a better kid. It makes him a better human.
Yeah, and it's okay to experience that in sport.
Yeah, I at the end of the day, you got to power through. You got people learn how to fight. They have to learn how to compete. They have to learn how to get through the tough situations. Yeah. And So that's why we do this. So, hey, look, this has been really good. I can't believe we're an hour and a half in.
Didn't we just start?
It feels like it, right? I wanted to talk a little bit about recruiting before we go.
Yeah.
Quickly, not quickly, but just give me your quick rundown because you were a college coach. Mm-hmm. You and your husband, John, have coached at the college level. Quick assessment on recruiting, where it's at, and, what could you tell the kids out there right now that are still trying to find their spot?
Recruiting where it's at, I feel like, man, these coaches have a tough job. There's so much great talent out there, and there's places for everybody. There's fits for everybody. It's one of those things that there's so many camps. There's so much now with technology. Everybody using Twitter and Snapchat and Instagram and everything, that it's important to stay focused on who you are as a player, and also remember, being somebody who's been on both sides of it, now as a parent, as my daughter is starting her recruiting process as well. It's a fit, it's a dance. Don't be distracted by the bells and whistles. Understand that the sacrifices that you have to make in order to play at those teams that are at the College World Series are unimaginable to most athletes at this point. It is something where you give your heart, your soul, your every waking moment. There is no college experience other than eat, sleep, drink, softball. That's it. And your academics. You're keeping your academics up. You're limited in what you can do as an athlete to major in because of the amount that you put into your skills. And that's okay, but be aware of it. Don't get your heart set on an Oklahoma if you're, this big, teeny tiny, there are things that we look for. We personality profile. I thought it was one of the greatest things. Coach Patrick Murphy, he used to put little personality profiles in his questionnaires, and things like that. And we use all these tools, but a lot of it is, what are you willing to do? Everybody says they're willing to work. I will work harder than anybody else. How can you measure that? You can't. You don't know what the next person's doing. If you don't like the girls that are going to these schools, personality wise, you've played with them because now you've got so many girls that are bouncing from one team to another. So they play with a lot of kids. Chances are you're not going to like the rest of the team because personality wise, we as coaches, we want to work with personalities that fit our coaching style because we're going to be able to get the most out of you. It's not personal. It's just remembering as parents and athletes that are going through the recruiting process, it's not just about you. It's about the fact that these coaches, this is their livelihood. And every time they make an offer to a kid, they have to be 100% sure, or as sure as we can be. It's never 100%.
Right.
But that this kid's going to come in and elevate my program. Because if my program's not succeeding and we're not successful, that's my livelihood. That's my family. And I think a lot of parents forget the fact that college coaches, this is our job. This is our livelihood. And as parents, when you're doing your job and you're having to rely on somebody else to perform in order for the success of your actual job, it becomes a whole lot more stressful, right? So they're going to look at any and every little thing. We stand around, we profile the parents, we're listening in. We want the kids that are going to fit the culture that we are creating. And it has nothing to do with, the bells and the whistles and the shoes and, the workout gear and all that. It looks beautiful for about the 15 days from the time that these kids do their reveals. Everybody likes to do their reveals now. Look at these shoes we got. This is our stuff. And then I'd say probably about 20, 30 days later, those clothes are looking pretty wrecked because that is your uniform. That's your work. You're putting it in with that, so there's a fit, but don't be afraid to be on your own, right? Don't be afraid to make the decision based on who you are and not based on what other people's egos say you should be. Recruiting is very much like dating, all of us, we can look on TV and go, oh my gosh, that girl's amazing. That program is awesome. I want to be there. I want to see myself at the College World Series. But very few have the opportunity to actually play at that level. So be realistic. Who are you playing against? Who are you competing against? Who are they being recruited by? And that kind of gives you a base of where to shoot for, you know?
Right. Well, getting ready to go through it, with your own daughter, I think it's going to be interesting to watch. I follow her on X and you guys, and I think you're doing a great job. Super excited about where you're going with your team. For those that haven't figured it out, you coach in our organization. And like I told you before, I really need to find a way to tap into your knowledge pitching wise. So let's collaborate a little bit on what we can do. Maybe a Zoom call, maybe we need to start planning a camp. We got to have you out for our Zoom camp. There's some other things I'm working on. So love to have you involved a little bit more. I really appreciate you coming on. Been good.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Enjoyed.
All right. Well, I just want to say thanks for listening. We will continue working to elevate the sport and get caught up with those who are influential in the fast pitch community. And hopefully we can help you navigate your softball journey. If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Caught Up with Randy Kaye or at Coach KAZ. Listen to the audio version of our podcast on Google, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you consume your favorite content. You can also follow us on X and on Instagram using the same handles at Coach KAZ. Thanks for listening and or watching. Have a good day.
This one's for my wife. Could have left 1,000 times just about my side.